It seems to be a common consensus amongst the Peaky Blinder viewer base that the last two seasons, being season 5 and 6, present an undoubtedly somber and depressing feeling. In today's video, we will examine and analyze why this is the case and how it is once again all linked to Tommy Shelby. Now, season 5 is without a doubt the season in which Tommy is the most mentally unstable and deranged, constantly paranoid, infuriated, and albeit scared of what is and what can be. The season is full of drama and consequences from the get-go, be it ranging from the death of the journalist in episode 1 to the death of Ben Younger in episode 5. In response to such pivotal events, Tommy's stress is at an all-time high, and throughout the season we see Tommy guzzling opium to dull the pain he has in his head. Furthermore, such irrational decisions on behalf of Michael, specifically his defiance and prior inability to listen correctly, as well as the sheer dominance of Oswald Mosley over Tommy and his gang, straight up telling him in episode 5 of season 5 that Tommy will give away some of his racetracks for absolutely no return, and there's nothing Tommy can do about it. As opposed to the prior 4 seasons, which focused heavily on gang culture and the uprising of the renowned Peaky Blinders gang, Season 5 mainly covers Tommy's political undergoings, intertwined with a rivalry against a new gang named the Billy Boys, and a new potential opium deal with the Chinese. During this season, Tommy experiences multiple difficulties. First, his paranoia throughout the season is immeasurable. His manic episodes are a clear sign of this. He constantly confides in Ada, his sister, as to who is coming for his throne, who wants to overthrow him. Furthermore, people's inability to follow his orders further adds to his anger and frustration, as if his members and partners had listened to him, certain scenarios would have not occurred, such as Polly freeing Aberama, or Michael holding onto the stocks and losing a large proportion of the company money. This all accumulates in what arguably seems to be the downfall of Tommy, and the overall potential downfall of the Peaky Blinders. As without Tommy and his plans, the gang has the large potentiality to fail. Not to mention the final scene of season 5 and episode 6 literally depicts the accumulation of all his stress, anger, and paranoia as he holds a gun to his head in an open field, yelling. Now, after the height of anxiety that was experienced in season 5 episode 6, season 6 comes along and offers an arguably even more depressing season. In the first episode, it is revealed that Tommy's inability to control his mind and his situations around him did indeed lead to him pulling the trigger. However, thanks to his brother Arthur, the gun did not go off, as he had taken the bullets out. Secondly, once he makes it back to his house, he receives a call from Laura McKee, the IRA general, dictating that Polly, Aberama, and Barney were all killed during Oswald Mosley's speech as a consequence of Tommy failing to understand his own limitations. And in that pivotal sentence, we can understand why the final 2 seasons are so depressing. But first, a quick rundown about the general atmosphere and environment of season 6. Season 6 of Peaky Blinders really was a deeper insight into the mind and life of Tommy Shelby, presenting a more or less entire season as a character study. Now, whether you like to admit it or not, Peaky Blinders has always focused predominantly on Tommy Shelby. He is without a doubt the main character. Now, as I said, season 6 focuses mainly on him and his conflict with Michael and the fascists of England and America, reintroducing characters as Oswald Mosley, and introducing new big players like Jack Nelson and Hayden Stagg. On top of all this, he experiences the greatest despair a parent can, being the loss of a child. In this case, his daughter Ruby. In episode 3, we see Tommy attempt to do everything he possibly can to save his daughter, even hunting down Esme and proceeding to enact a treasure-like hunt to find the source of his daughter's illness, which turned out to be the sapphire which the Russians had gifted him in season 3. A cool little callback. After doing all he can, his own desire to help and control an ultimately uncontrollable situation, his daughter dies. But more importantly, Tommy misses the death of his daughter, her final moments, as he was out trying to figure out a metaphorical antidote to an incurable situation. Much more happens within this season, such as Tommy betraying Lizzie emotionally through Diana, and him in the end killing Michael with a bullet to the head. All of which finally accumulates in the final episode of the season, being the final episode of the whole series, being perhaps the best ending to a TV show that I've ever witnessed, with Tommy literally redeeming himself, riding out on a white horse, with his possessions burning in the background. This seems to be the consensus among most viewers as the best finale to a TV series. Now, with the background of both seasons being covered, why exactly are the final two seasons so depressing, and more importantly, why is it intentionally so? Yep, you heard me. The final two seasons of Peaky Blinders are intentionally meant to be somber and tragic. We first need to start at the beginning. The first 1 to 4 seasons, specifically the first 2 seasons, focus extremely heavily on the glorification of the gangster life. This is done through the depiction of wealth, status, and power, showing us suitable rewards Tommy and his gang are experiencing and receiving for undergoing illegal, brutal activities, which make others worse off. Essentially depicting why Tommy does what he does, his motivation, and his overall ambition to achieve a great level of power and wealth. As with other gangster dramas, specifically The Godfather Part 3 and Goodfellas come to mind, the same message sustains. Under all the wealth, power, and glory acquired from a life of crime, underneath is a cruel, harsh truth. A life full of betrayal, envy, paranoia, and tragedy. In Goodfellas, the main character becomes a normal, ordinary citizen by the end, betraying his so-called family. And in The Godfather Part 3, Michael Corleone experiences severe guilt and loss, with his prior actions all accumulating. These all essentially depict that no matter how high an individual gets, from the money, power, glory, there are always consequences that need to be paid in the end. It always happens to catch up with you. Peaky Blinders is no different, showing Tommy for the ruthless gangster he is, whom strives for power, control, and wealth, and who is willing to betray, burn, and kill anyone necessary to do so. This can be seen from the very first season, in which he plans to betray and kill Billy Kimber after their formed alliance. This underlying theme depicts that the only real reward Tommy and his gang receive for their actions is material wealth, material objects, and power, in which this reward comes from the need to constantly be more ruthless, isolated, and cold than their enemies, which can be seen in the finale of Season 3, when he states that Section D, as well as royalty in general, inclusive of such as politicians, judges, lawyers, etc., are worse than them, worse than the Peaky Blinders. And thus, with the constant striving for power, Tommy becomes so disconnected from reality, seeing everyone as a chess piece which can be maneuvered, manipulated, or destroyed, in the overall goal of satiating his ambitions. This can be seen subtly from his personality and demeanour in Season 1, being still ruthless, yes, but a bit more talkative, smiling, and having a good time, slowly transitioning to the cold, calculated king he becomes and is by Season 5. This is even further solidified in Season 6, when in Episode 2, Lizzie says to Tommy, "It's like you are watching everything on a screen. And, do you even feel anything anymore?" The story of Peaky Blinders, the story of Tommy Shelby, can only strive for greatness and a good outcome when Tommy himself strives for a good outcome, to which in Season 1 to 5, he is merely thirsty for power and control. We start to finally see his good intentions slowly throughout the show, such as his orphanages, which he establishes, the hospital he helps build, and finally the amount of housing he intends to build for the working class, ordinary people. Furthermore, a very significant point is that Tommy just doesn't get to decide to be good whenever he wants. A clear example of this is when he believes to be doing the right thing, relaying information to Ben Younger in Season 5 about the rise and threat of fascism and Oswald Mosley. To which, Ben Younger meets Tommy in his office, has a meeting, and is instantly killed in a car bomb once leaving, with said car bomb also taking the life of an innocent child, showing that Tommy's bad deeds cannot be outweighed by his good intentions, which resulted in the death of 2 innocent people. Tommy even realizes this, stating that their deaths were a consequence of his good intentions. In finality, Tommy realizes that all he has taken from others, someone will wish to eventually take from him, just like he did to them. This can be seen through his peaked paranoia in Season 5, and Michael's ambition to become the leader of the Peaky Blinders. The lifestyle in of itself does not allow for happiness or comfort, or even glory pertained from the first 1 to 3 seasons. And thus Season 6 is arguably as well depressing, as it shows Tommy reflecting on the decisions of his life and the consequences he is facing for them. His guilt. The conversations with Arthur in Season 6 alone depict Tommy's potential regret and consideration of the wrongs he has done, and the potential good he can hope to achieve. This is further extrapolated upon, as in most, if not all, of the prior conversations Tommy had with Arthur. Tommy always had an angle to which he manipulated Arthur, getting him to do something for him, all a part of Tommy's plan. Yet in Season 6, Tommy genuinely opens up to Arthur and has real conversations, such as in the basement where they reflect on their childhood together, as well as the war, with the conversation even ending on a positive note in Tommy advising Arthur to stop using drugs. And in the final episode of Season 6, when they hug and reconcile, showing each other the appreciation they deserve, and more importantly, depicting Tommy seeing Arthur for whom he really is. His brother, not a mad dog that he has on a leash willing to commit violence at the drop of a hat, but his brother, his blood, his best friend. And thus in the final episode, in the very end, it perhaps finishes on a hopeful note, rather than depressing like the previous whole 2 seasons. Tommy finally realizes that he has spent too long killing and craving wealth, power and status, instead of loving, caring and building something that is reputable and genuinely good for his community and the people he holds closest to him. He refuses to kill the corrupt doctor, instead deciding to let him live, displaying his new outlook on life, a more benevolent outlook. And with all that being said, that is why the final 2 seasons of Peaky Blinders was so depressing. It was simply the accumulation of negative actions to which they had all previously committed, and now were paying the price for. It is really masterful writing on behalf of Stephen Knight, as he draws the viewer into all this glitz and glamour, and almost glorifies the life of being a gangster and striving for power through seasons 1 to 4. And thus it is understandable why a lot of viewers enjoyed these seasons more than the final 2, as the first 4 seasons showed the fun and hype and enjoyment of these activities, whereas the final 2 showed the consequences of these activities, as they were, albeit, bad and unlawful and unethical activities carried out. With all that being said, however, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive analyzation into the final 2 seasons of Peaky Blinders and why they were so depressing and somber and dark, as well as a deep dive really into Tommy Shelby. If you want to see more of these deep dive type videos, please let me know in the comments below, as well as by leaving a like. I enjoy talking to you guys in the comments and responding. So, with everything now said, I hope you have a great day or night, wherever you are.